Hello and welcome everybody, I am SocioPsycho, and today we take a look at The Incredible Adventures of VanHelsing2. This is the sequel to the first, created by Neocore Games, and it builds upon the first game with maintaining its structure in the same combat that you've experienced in the first, and what the game consists of is a third-person hack-and-slash RPG game. Now, they've built a lot more onto this game than the first one offered, and it tells and progresses the story in the same manner. There are definitely things in the game that you may enjoy, and there are some things that become tedious, but the combat and the fighting remains true to its predecessor, and it does so in a very successful manner. When we look here, we get DLC for any future content they come out with. When the first game popped, a few months later they popped out some new characters, and I'm sure we can expect the same in the second one. When we go into gameplay options, what's important right here is the fact that you have the option to respawn enemies. So what this means is, if you have this on and you clean out a bunch of enemies in the area, what will happen is that when you log out and log back in, when you go into that area, those enemies will be there again. Now, this is not really something you need, as the game does have a large crafting system in it, so if you're going in hopes for an item drop, you might find something you want, but that's up to you. As far as thinking you may need it to grind your level up, you won't. I've had it off and I completed the game at level 60. So when we go into the audio, now the audio is really nice because it has everything that you need completely separated in a very professional manner, and this is greatly appreciated. Not only is that important, but also the music in the game is quite well done. It keeps the same theme of style that you can expect from the first game, which is a steampunk archaic style because it's a steampunk world. When we go into the video options, now the game does have a wide berth of screen resolutions, which is nice, and you have your basic very low, medium, high, very high quality. But when we go into advanced settings, we can see that there's a lot more to it, and this is definitely nice to have available. When it comes to performance, I haven't seen any issues with tearing or clipping. The game has been significantly polished over the first game. What they've done is they've kept the basic core of the first game, and they've updated the graphics and the textures and made things smoother, and it runs a lot better than the first one does. It looks crisper and it looks cleaner. Now, when it comes to frames per second, I've been running pretty much at 60, and sometimes here and there it'll drop in between 30 and 40. But this is not a common occurrence. I've seen it maybe 3 times throughout the entire game, so it's not something that is common, but it is something that does happen now and again. But regardless, it never broke my immersion, and the game never lagged or really suffered, or I felt it suffered from that. When we go into controls, you have all your needed controls, and everything is rebindable with no issues. There's only one key, there's no secondary keys, so if you're hoping for that, that's not the case. If you play the first one, you may already be noticing you have resume story and scenario. Now, there is a play plus in the game. It's not as obvious in the main story page. You have to go into select character, and the option will be here to change campaign to never ending story, which will start you back over at the beginning of the game at the level that you are. This offers you the availability to continue progressing through the game, but more as for your own gear, as the level cap is level 60, so you don't feel like you're really progressing much. It's more for people who desire to have the best gear or continue just to play, and it will become available to you after you complete the story the first time through. Multiplayer is pretty much the exact same, except you have some additions. Now, you have the story campaign, Nightmare Scenarios. Scenarios are their version of extra content, and we'll go into what scenarios exactly are down the road. And you have PvP game modes. PvP modes, you can battle somebody else, and game mode, which I'm not sure exactly what that is because it's not even clickable. So it might be something that's future content coming in. To join a game, it's very easy, and if you plan on playing with your friends, doing so, you shouldn't have any trouble connecting with them. So let's start a new character so I can show you exactly what you can expect from a character creational standpoint, because that's important. Now, if you're new to Van Helsing, then these are your 3 basic options. You have your Hunter, your Thermal Mage, and your Arcane Mechanic. Your Hunter is a mix in between melee and ranged, depending on which way you want to go. Firma Mage is apparently a mage. The mechanic is your engineer style class. He has traps and summons minions that really help him out in combat. And I'm going to show you each one of these. Now, what they did improve upon is the difficulty sliders, which is nice, and it's not also stuck in cement. So if you pick one, in the game you can actually change it to a lower or higher setting, depending on how your comfort level is with what you've picked. Now, this is nice that they have casual, normal, and hard. If you're experienced with Van Helsing or this style of games, playing it on hard really isn't all that bad. The hard, for an experienced player, is pretty easy. If you're looking for a challenge, Heroic's where you want to go, and Fearless is supposedly the new option they put in, because I remember playing the first game and they didn't have Fearless, they just had up to Heroic, and Heroic was still easy, for me anyways. So having Fearless is an exciting thing that I look forward to testing out to see where it is. Now, I played the game on hard my first playthrough because I needed to see as much as I could and get through it as fast as I could to do this review. There really wasn't too much of an issue in that regard. But it's nice to have this level of customization. Now, not only is that important, but you also have hardcore character. If you're not aware of what hardcore character is, it means if you die, your character is lost. You only have one life to live. So that's something for more hardened veterans. So here we have the basic interface, and I'm going to show you what you can expect from getting this game with the character layout first. Now, there's a lot to go over, and I'm sure something will be of interest to you in this, so you can get a basic understanding. Now, as you've probably noticed already, that the interface is a lot more organized. It's cleaner, it looks better than the first game. Now, you have a companion, the same companion as the first one, Lady Katarina. She is a ghost, and she will fight with you. You can either use her as a DPS, ranged, or a melee fighter. You can build her up to sort of be a tank, or you can put her in spirit form, which gives you 10% damage reduction. Now, once she's in spirit form, she cannot fight. You can choose in between these different options here. We'll go more into how well the AI and the companions and everything of that work out later, because right now we just want to show you a basic layout of what you can expect. Now we're going to open up her inventory here. She has stats and characteristics just as you do. The body, which gives a bonus to her defense and hit points. The dexterity, which increases range damage and dodge value. Willpower increases magic based and critical chance of magic attacks. And luck, which increases your gold find and magic item find. It also increases the damage she deals with critical hits. So it's depending on which direction you want to take her as to a character, you put the points when she levels up. Once she levels up, she gets 3 points to spend. You put them in which category you want. Now, she cannot wear as much gear as you. When we open up our inventory, as you can see, there's a lot of gear slots. She does not have legs and whatnot. She's a ghost. So she's limited more in what she can wear, which is perfectly fine because it doesn't really break the story and doesn't cripple her too much because she still is well balanced as a character and more importantly as a companion. And as you can see here, you have a DPS of melee and ranged to close out my inventory. And down here is important because this you have the elemental resistance, the poison resistance, and the physical resistance. Now, when you increase the gear, all the stats will go up. This is a basic thing to show you. Now, in behavior, they did change a few things from the first one, and it's important to notice. Now, you can change what you want her here or on the main page, as I showed you. Ghost, ranged, melee, or ghost, ranged, melee. So you can do it both there. Now, in the behavior, you can defend whether or not you want her to assist in what your target you are fighting, so you can try to burn down one target faster, have your companion attack the weakest creature, or attack the creature that's most vulnerable to her attacks, or just defend and attack anybody who is attacking you. One thing that's definitely nice and helps pick up this pace and speed is if you mark on what you want the companion to pick up so one item drops. If you want her to pick up everything so you don't have to worry about loot, you just click on everything. If you want her to just pick up potions and other items, that's up to you. You can also send her to a store. If my entire inventory is full, I can deliver that inventory to her, and then I can send her shopping. when I send her shopping, she can also pick up potions, mana, or health, and she can, she'll sell everything in her inventory. This is definitely nice, but really not something that is overly needed, ironically. It's a nice to have, and it's really good for when you do need it. I'm glad it's in the game, but the way the items drop, unlike other hack and slash games, you don't end up with a majority of crappy items. The loot in the game is actually well balanced, and you're not running around with 90% of your inventory being complete trash. So it's nice to have a balance in the item drops where you're not flooded with trash, but you may not necessarily be flooded with anything you can use either. And if you need to give it to her, she'll go shopping, come back in a minute or so, and you're good to go with clean inventory. Now, with the way the game manages the loot in reference to how much inventory space you end up having and being able to transfer to Katarina, you also have the ability to just simply hit T, which will teleport you back from almost from anywhere you are to base where you can sell your items. You don't need portal scrolls, and it doesn't hinder you in any fashion. You can be back in town, sell, and back on. And the fact that you're not having to do this very often because of how the loot drops makes the game flow a lot smoother and keeps you immersed into the combat aspects a lot longer, so your inventory never becomes an issue. Now, also speaking about inventory, how it's broken up, and another thing I really love about this game over other genres of this game is that the inventory does not force your potions, your scrolls, your crafting items all into one inventory. It's broken up. So you have your potions tabs where your mana and health potions will go, scrolls for spells and crafting items, runes and fragments, which are more crafting items, there'll be a tab for quest items as well. It breaks it up very nicely and keeps it very organized so it doesn't impose upon you being able to find anything, and you never have an issue when you go to a merchant and there'll be an option to sell all your gear, and it's never an issue of, oh crap, I sold something that I didn't need to, or I sold my potions by accident, or something of that nature. So a health slider has been moved to on the interface bar itself instead of in her behavior option, and it will be at default at 30%. So if she has a health potion and she is low in health, she will drink. You have such an abundance of money that in my character I bought her 500 health potions, so it wasn't even an issue. Money is definitely not something that you are short of, and if anything you have an abundance of, to the point where you just need to be stupidly spending to run out of anything of your money-wise. When we go into skills, now this is what's interesting about Katarina and why she makes such a good companion in this style of game, is because you can choose how you want her to play. If you want her to be a ghost and just increase on luck and magic items find, and you take care of all the heavy lifting, there's options for that. There's options for transferring damage that you receive to her, 3% to all of VanHelsing's resistance, spell power increased by 3, attack speed increased by 3. So if you put it in ghost mode and you go down this tree, it will give your character even more benefits to decide how you want to build her. Now, this can be the same about if you want to make her a melee character or a ranged character as well, because they have different abilities, and in these different trees that can be definitely useful to how you want to play. And that's what's important, that's what's nice and makes her a viable companion, is because not only is she somebody that you are stuck with, but she's somebody that you can customize to a degree upon your playstyle. So she's never impeding upon the way you want to play based off of her choices of abilities. Now when we look here very carefully, you have switching between your ranged and your melee, and your options here, you have 6 instead of 4, which is an improvement upon the first, which is nice. We will eventually fill these up as your level progresses and your skill progresses. Now another thing that's good and interesting to know about this game is the fact that yes, it is a sequel to the second one, but you can start at level 1 or you can do a veteran class, which is level 30, which we'll go more into in a second. So as you can see here, you have your defense, your spell power, your attack damage, and pretty much as similar as Katarina. Now, what is an improvement over first is they kept what you were used to in the first game, and they built upon it. So the amount of choice you have in the game is very vast. So not only are these skills you need to pick one of, but they have different levels in these skills. So as you can see, level 0 out of 10, 10, 10. Some will have 8. When you pick a playstyle of your desire, you can build further into that, and you can use rage if you have abilities, which will increase the potency of that skill. What that means and how that works is you have your health and your mana, and in the middle you have rage. Rage is gained just by fighting. That's all it does. But you see on the side you have 3 items, and in each ability you have 3 items. These items use rage, and they do various things, plus 50% damage. You can really increase the ability that you are using if you have one of these selected, which will use rage. Now there's also perks to not using rage, but we'll go into that a little bit more. And as you can see here, there's a lot of content in just the melee fighter alone. If you want to go ranged with a hunter, there is also a lot of choices. And so I'm not going to go over every single one of these with you, but you can see that there's a large variation of that. Now when we get into tricks, these are what you put on your taskbar. When you choose to do attacks, you have your left mouse button and your right mouse button for your main attack and secondary attack. Your tricks are your skills which you can passively put. These can be anything from mitigation to damage, to teleporting, to slowing down the field, backflipping, rocket jump, chain snare, and there are 3 classes, and these do not share with the other classes. There may be some overlap of very basic ones, such as Ghost Image, summon 2 illusionary copies of Lady Katarina. So if we do that now, as you can see, 2 got summoned. There is a large berth, as you can tell, of things to choose, to things to read over, and as a new player to the game, you may be intimidated by this. But if you're new to the series or the game itself, do not worry. Put it on a lower difficulty setting and just experiment, because the game is balanced very well even for new people, as long as you put it on a scale which is appropriate to your level of play. And auras are passive abilities. You have the access to slot 3 of them. Now these all do different things as well, and they are different per class. So it really offers a huge customizational experience and allows you to replay the game in a manner that you may not have expected, or maybe something you were looking forward to play through the game another way. It offers a large variation, and that is what is this game's biggest compliment in comparison to other styles and other games of this genre. It's because very few games have this level of customization. Now yes, there are a few, but replayability, single player, and being able to do this many things, it offers you the options and choices, along with graphically looking nice. Animations of the game are nice, but let's go into a few more of these and then we'll show you other things. So you also have a perk system. Now perks are unlocked as you complete and progress your character, not only through the story, but upon which styles of combat skills and abilities you place your points into. And what these perks do, they give you a passive permanent bonus. Now 10% damage while at max range. This goes into when we were talking about rage. Is it worth using one of those abilities or just having 10% damage increase all the time if you're at max rage? 30% cooldown, natural healer, first attack is 5% critical chance. This second chance is only allowed on a non-hardcore character. When you die, you merely become incorporeal for 4 seconds, but keep in mind that you can only get this second chance every 3 minutes. Now this is a nice little one, especially for people who are not accustomed to these style of games, because if you die, it doesn't mean you're automatically screwed, because it gives you sort of a chance to fight again and additional inventory. Now there'll be a lot more unlocked, and I'll show you how large that list goes in a moment here. Now when we look at the journal, they improved upon the journal as well even more, which is impressive. It's not only just a journal upon what you need to do, but also upon everything in the game. It's your lore. It's the booklet of knowing what is going on. So if you didn't play the first one, you can find out exactly what's happening, not only by the game itself, because the game is a little heavy on the story in the beginning. There's no denying that. And it brings everybody who may have not played the first one up to speed with ease. And as you can see, tells you about different characters that are important in the world and other characters that you'll come across, as well as the world itself. So it offers a huge level of lore and knowledge upon the world, which is definitely nice because you should be able to find the answers you seek to questions you may have throughout the game in your journal. The map is obviously the map, and the overlay of a map is done very nicely. As it progresses outwards, you can change the intensity of a map, the transparency of it in the options, and your achievements, which are also linked to your Steam achievements. Glory, which are extra things to go for, give increases in your character's progression. So as we look here, this is the Firma Mage, and the ores, there are some that are the same as the other ones, but there are also some which are different due to the fact that now I'm a mage character. And it's the same deal with the tricks. Because you're a mage, you're going to have abilities which are more complementary to your skill. And when we look at the mage tree itself, you can see there's a large variation. It just keeps going down because you have 60 levels. And now if you think, yes, there are 60 levels in this game, and I'll get majority of these, you are wrong. You will, unless you pick one in every single ability, you're looking at only having a few traits, because there are passive abilities in here which help increase your overall damage, and then there's specific abilities which are damage abilities. Up to you based on how you want to play, but there's a large berth of choices which lead into not only does every character have a large berth, but it comes back to, well, which character do you want to play with the first time through, and do you want to play that character a second time in a different manner? How do you want to play? And there's a lot of playability. Now, when we look back at this character creational screen and you have a veteran, the game starts from level 30, you have the option to use a pre-generated character. This is nice. As I've showed you, there is a lot of character customization. And so if you want to start level 30 and just go from there, you can kind of pick one of your own pre-selected characters, from the melee character to a gunslinger to a spellkeeper, different types of mages and different types of engineers. You know, these offer you a choice to just jump in quickly and try to be that. Or you can do a custom. Now, what custom means is when you pick your class and you go into the game, you will end up having to select your traits, where you want to put your ability points and skill points yourself, so it doesn't limit you that. Now, what you may need to do is custom, because you get excited here and you see import. Okay, so when we look at import here, you have the option to input a character, but they have to be level 30. And what is nice about this is the fact that the character that you were used to playing in the past can be brought into this game. Now, ironically, when I started this game with my other character, I was not able to import a character into this game from the first one. It said the save file is too old. Now they've either fixed that on their side, or if you run into that issue, I don't know what to tell you, because it wasn't working for me before, but now it's perfectly fine for me to be able to import a character. You may run with the same issue, you may not run with all, but the fact that they offer and allow a character to be imported is really nice, because it keeps you connected with your hero and how you selected. So one more piece of a puzzle that needs to be shown are scenarios. Now, the scenario mode lets you play on separate maps with special rules, as well as randomly generated mini campaign. So scenarios, you start in your base, and you start with the selectional choice of different maps. The more you complete, the more that unlock. Now, basically just more content from the game, which offers different challenges and uniqueness by reusing some of the different maps of the game with different purposes and missions. Such as we look here, overran tunnels, frenzy, kill 150 enemies within the time limit. Now we have the option to make this more difficult if we wish to, but we can set the conditions for each of the scenarios from 1 to 5 as well. So we have the option to make it even more difficult, and different maps offer different scenarios. It's a good collaboration of using the content you have and making it better and making more use of it. So scenario maps are not only limited to single player, you can also do them with your friends, which can be rather entertaining if you've already completed the main campaign. Now, when speaking about side content, the tower defense mechanic that they had from the first game, and they brought it forward into the second game. Now, what this entails is that the enemy forces are trying to make their way through the underground catacombs to your base, to your hidden lair. Along this way, you need to set up traps to stop the individual waves. Now, each map is different, and as you progress through the story, different layouts and different maps will come available to you as you level up, increasing in difficulty. Now, there are a different way they've done the traps this time. It's more integrated into the user face directly on the map, and rather having to go onto a different screen. And they did that by simply targeting over the traps that are onto the map and middle mouse button clicking. Now you'll see that there is a red bar and a green bar under the minimap. The red bar is the strength of the enemy waves, as well as the number of which wave we are on, and the green is how many that our base is completed at. And when we complete a wave, and we will get a little summary of how well we did. Did we let it through? How many did we kill? How many did the traps kill? It's nice to have these little summaries. And as you can see that there's a wide variation of the traps that you're used to from the first one, spread out on the different maps, and it's really up to you to decide how you want to use them. Because what's nice about this is that the enemy, as you can see with the red patterns and red dots, is that they will move and walk in different directions in different lanes, and you're not sure who is going to go where. And this can really cause some issues in having to defend better, or place strategically traps, or just be a better and faster killer as an individual. You have the option to look at the map, look at the lanes, look at the portals that they're coming out of, and get an understanding of what monsters are going to be coming ahead. So this mini game offers a break from the story, and it's intriguing and powerful, and it fits well within the campaign. It doesn't feel out of place in this universe at all, and there's a lot of fun to be had in it because they did the tower defense game better than before. They improved upon what they had, and they did so in a good manner. Which leads us right into level design. Now, why I feel this is important to show and point out is because they built and improved upon the first one with the elevators. Now, in the old one, when you went up to the elevator, your companions wouldn't usually follow you and you get stuck, and it was a bit of annoyance. They corrected that mistake, and when you go up or down an elevator, all your companions will automatically pop right down the base of where you are. And the level design that they implemented into the game is actually done very well. The animational quality of how things look and how easy it is to overlook certain chests, items, pathways, hidden doors is very well integrated into the world. The animational quality and the atmosphere that it propels you into, of your feeling that you're in the siege of Bagovia, or you feel that you're in the wilderness. It's snowy, it's rainy, it's cloudy, it has atmosphere to it, and it's done a really good job on improving upon the first game and standing on its own merits as looking as something that is quite beautiful and very easy to lose yourself into. It immerses you into the world very easily, and it does so very beautifully. Now, when it comes to level design, if I had to gripe and I had to say what would I pick that could have done better, is that it simply feels shorter than the first game. It feels as if it doesn't have as many maps to it and as much variation in the atmospheres as you did come across in the first game, which is unfortunate. They even go and reuse one of the maps, one of the first maps in Bagovia, and it's questionable. It's really questionable based upon the location of how the map's used in the beginning. The first level of destroy all these guys and then you get pushed back and you're retreating into the lair, to when you see the map again, it seems more as a pivotal point of taking the town. It just feels odd and awkward, and it's unfortunate they had to reuse that content because it didn't feel like there was enough gap in between to really justify it. Where when we played the first game, we had much more of a feel of the city of Bagovia. There was a lot more understanding of the streets and the world, and we felt like we explored much more, where in this case it seemed like a rinse and repeat of the same facilities, and it was unfortunate of that matter. Now, when it comes to design, the game has a fairly large crafting system implemented into it. When we take something as a laboratory, and what this allows us to do is we have runes and essences that we pick up throughout the game. We can put one of our items that can accept these runes, which have a purple tier next to them. Each rune takes up a certain amount of that tier, and we are able to then put that specific rune inserted into the item. Now there's other things you can do with this in regards. You can take runes out of the items, or you can put them in. But it goes beyond that, because you're also able to manifest different runes together by combining and empowering the runes in a transmutational way. This allows the combination and creation of higher level tiers of gems, which you'll be able to augment your gear with. Now, you can only put these gems in items that have the slot allotment for them, and there are gems that will allow you to give your equipment the essence holding capability, and easily as you can put stuff and items together, you can take them apart as well. All of this costs money to do, but like I said earlier, the money that you spend in this game is really nothing to worry about, as you end up with so much money that it doesn't even matter. Now, there's also different types of crafters, and there is the rune crafting. And what the rune crafting does is it allows you to break down different items that you come across. So instead of selling some of your items to merchants for gold because you have so much gold, you can actually put items you don't want to break them down. And then when you insert and create different items, you can put a weapon and runes into a creation to try to make an item even better. And this definitely takes crafting a bit further, and to really understand it, you would probably need to look at a guide or just spend a lot of time figuring out exactly how you want to do it yourself. Is it too complicated? No, I don't think so, but it does require definitely some looking into and understanding. It's not something you can just jump right into and expect to understand instantly. All crafting is sort of that way, I guess. And it does a really fine job of allowing you to have a sense of growth and power. And the game also has a fine storage chest. Now, the storage chest is linked in between all your characters that are on normal play, meaning if you have a hardcore character, your chest will not be shared with that. It will only be shared with other hardcore characters. So any gear that you do have that you come across that you aren't able to use for your character, you can put in your chest and the other character can use it. Now, your items can also be enchanted. Now, the thing about enchanting in this game is that it's done randomized, and it's sort of annoying that way, because when you put an item into a slot and you hit enchant, which costs money, you'll get a random property, and you have the option to disenchant it and then re-enchant to try to get what you want. You usually get what you want pretty easily. And when we look at this page here, and this is what's interesting, is because you can re-roll and randomize the style of one of the powers that are able to be put onto the item to begin with. So you can actually re-roll one of the items and try to get it a higher level, and then continuously try to get that enchantment onto your weapon. It's unique to see this. Whether you like that style or not, I mean, I'm not much of a crafter, so me personally, it doesn't really affect me because I don't touch the whole system altogether, but it's something that is of interest and depth, and that's what's important. It has a lot of depth. Now, beyond the crafting and the decrafting and deconstruction, you also have the ability to reset any ability points, action points of you or Katarina, which is important to note. And if that's not enough, if crafting and all that's not enough, you also have Artifact Forge, which brings the possibility of when you put in 3 different items of the same together and you craft them, they have a chance of becoming a new weapon and bringing up the characteristics of those that you merged into it. This is risky. It can either destroy or not give you what exactly you need, because it's all about taking a chance and trying to get what you need done right. Now, one thing more to note that's hiding in there somewhere in between all those crafters and enchantress is the fact that your armor, if you have a set of armor that you enjoy, you can actually take that and switch for properties of an item that is greater than it to what you like. It's just a way of keeping the armor that you visually like while gaining the stats of a superior weapon. You're not merging anything together, you're just getting the costume effect of the item that you like. And so we come to a place where it's enhancing the story, or trying to. And here you have the resistance command control configuration. Now, what I mean by that is, in this right here, because I recorded it in early stages, you have 3 out of 4 generals, which command the elite troops. Each single commander has different personality traits. And when we look at the side here of army strength, amount of soldiers that you have, active soldiers. Now, you buy soldiers and they're very cheap. It's not an issue at all. And as you gain in level and complete more missions, the strength of your army will grow and you can gain more and more soldiers, as well as the equipment level. I really had no issues at all just blasting through and getting 30 out of 30 because money in this game is not an issue. It's in abundance. How this affects you is it adds a slight depth of making you feel as if the city is under siege, as if there's a war going on, as you're in control of resistance and you're giving orders to the elite troops. There are missions that pop up, and these missions will require a certain amount of militia resistance units to go into it, and that's apparent on the portrait of each mission. As you see right here, it says 14. Now, we pick which commander we feel is best to send out against that mission, because each commander has slightly different characteristics of different facing. Some are more stealthy and sneak, and others have more strength and melee. Some are diplomatic and understand archaic or technology better. And when you upgrade, you're able to increase a characteristic or allow them to carry one more relic. The relics add a small passive ability. They could be anything from increasing the characteristics on the character sheet for that character slightly, or increasing the speed upon which they complete the mission. It is dependent totally on the item. Now, why this matters is because it's a sense of progression in the story. The concept and layout of the idea is good, but where I feel this has fallen is the fact that at no point that I've noticed during my gameplay do I or am I allowed to actually fight alongside of any of my commanders. It leads it to a, oh well, this is good because I am part of resistance, I'm leading, I'm winning battles, but I never see these battles. I'm not allowed to participate in these battles. The main strength of this system is the fact that if you don't like the tower defense games that I showed you earlier on, you can hand them off to resistance fighters here and they'll take care of it for you. But this does progress the story forward. There may be consequences, and the world does react to victories lost or missions not completed altogether. But like I said, the unfortunate thing is that while you do receive equipment and gear and items from victories, you do not have the opportunity to fight alongside of your generals. It leaves you feeling as if it's more of a deterrent, something to try to force you into the story, or something to try to force you back into town, and it breaks your immersion in gameplay because there really isn't too much of a benefit. Yes, now and again you'll get a weapon that may be an upgrade, and then eventually you'll get a weapon off of a drop that supersedes the one that you got from a mission. So it's not as if the items you receive are spectacularly rare or special, and it feels like it just falls short in trying to fill a story gap and also a progression like, hey, come join and do this. And it's unfortunate that it feels more like a chore rather than an entertaining task to complete. Now, another interesting mechanic that they decided to lay out is the trophy display. As you level up, you get access to be able to place multiple trophies. Every trophy does something slightly different, This goes again into trying to make you feel as if you are a commander of troops, and a relic that you place there is going to have a vast effect upon your troops. The issue in this is, outside some battles, or even in those battles, you don't really need to summon men to be able to fight some of the victories. The odds are not weighed against you to a point where if you don't use resistance fighters, or there are no resistance fighters around, that it doesn't even matter. Ironically, the only place, or the one place that resistance fighters seem to be the most important is the very first mission, upon where you don't have access to it anyways. So it's a bit silly in that regard, and it comes off as either not important because it just gives your enemies buffs and your allies, minor buffs, but when you're not using your allies or your allies are never around, it doesn't matter. And yes, of course, you have trophies such as increased magical item find, but we're talking about a whole here, not just one item, and the value upon you place an entire army against. A new companion and interest. I'm not sure exactly what they were going for here or why they put in this chimera, but what this is, and it's another creature that you get through the story, and you can either summon it in the world as a pet and it will last for X amount of time and attack your enemies, or you can send it to hunt for different things in the inkwells. The inkwells are a dimensional realm alongside of Bogovia, which once playing you'll know what they are very easily. All it really does is give you a increase in gold or items when he comes back, if he comes back successfully. The amount of time it takes to summon and send the minion before you get the reward is not so vast, and the fact that you have to return to town to be able to send him back out into the world, or to even regain your items, breaks your immersion again because it's forcing you once more into town, instead of allowing you to have access to those commands in an easier way. Overall, the Chimera, the effort and level design they put into a Chimera, I think they would have been better off doing an entire new level in the level design instead of focusing on that. I didn't see any real gain or benefit from having the Chimera, and I could be wrong in the long end. Maybe somewhere down the road it is benefit, but from what I'm able to tell from how the gear stacks, the money, and the runes, there's real no point in progressional reasoning to focus your time on the Chimera. I feel while it may be an interesting concept and it is fleshed out very nicely, it is worthless. Now there's also on the side, as this is a RPG hack and slash, what town would be complete without a gambler? A gambler means he has items for sale which are unidentified. You have no clue what they're going to sell, and so it's up to you to find out by trial and error if you wish to waste your money in that regard. But the one thing I want to also state that I like the addition to in the game is consumable items. They've added items in the game which give your character a permanent buff, and you can use these items once. And if you used an item once already, you can give it to your companion Katarina, and she can use it too. It can increase your damage, it can increase your mitigation, base stats, and skills. There are a whole abundance of them, and that's what's really nice, because even when you start getting really high in levels, it makes you feel like you're still progressing, or you're gaining power even more, which gives you sort of a power trip and like a hunger fest because you want more of these, and it pushes you forward to play even more, which is nice. It's just one more little cog that continues to progress you further into the story, hunting and hunting. Which brings us to the story in the game. Now, it picks up exactly where the first one left off, and it does a good job of rendering what is going on for a new player. So much to the point that in the beginning it does take a little bit of patience, as it's about a good 20 minutes before you really start just getting into a combat heavy fighting. This fills the atmosphere up and explains the entire story for those who may not have played the first one. It does a very good job of connecting all the bridges and filling all the gaps for anybody playing or progressing the game forward into the series. Now, what is interesting about the writing and the storytelling in the game is, yes, it picks it up as you are the son of Van Helsing, but it has a lot of satire in it. It has a lot of references, Easter eggs, a lot of subtle and not so subtle humors in referring to other characters. Now, I show you this one little clip here that is of Saving Private Brian. It's a cute little joke and play on words. But what is interesting is that regardless of any of the escort quests you do, the way that they designed the quests, it's never something that is impeding to your progress. When it comes down to the escort quest, the person you are escorting cannot be targeted. They have no health bar the majority of the times. And in doing so, they will run forward on a certain pathway ahead of you. You will have to fight through all the defenses and enemies still, but you don't have to worry about all the stupidity that comes from all the escort quest issues in the past, such as he's running too slow, now he's running too fast, now he's getting killed, and it just gives you the, okay, well he's going ahead and I'm killing the enemies. In a way, it kind of defeats the purpose of an escort quest, but with how much annoyance is rounded up in escort quests, at the same time, it's actually nice to see, and I'm sure that is why they did it. One thing that is important to note, and that is really well written about the story, is the fact that when you make a decision in the game, the world will present you with a choice upon which you need to make, and regardless of what you decide to choose, it will have effects in the world. These could be very subtle or they could be severe. But the point is that the story connects. Even from the beginning of the game, when you do something, you may see the consequences of your decision later on in the end. This is really important in the RPG element of the game as it ties everything together. Now, when it comes to the story and how it progresses forward, the core basis of the story itself is nothing all that impressive. It doesn't just push you in and forward. But what keeps it going, what gives it life, is the banter you have with your companion, Lady Katerina. She fulfills a gap in the story where she expresses the distaste or discomfort for doing menial tasks and other such circumstances. It's her personality which helps tie together the entire world and makes something that may seem just tedious actually entertaining to do, because she is making fun of it or laughing about it, or her input helps guide the story from being never too serious or too tedious in any of the tasks. And what is nice to know is that yes, they use a lot more cinematics, even if small little cinematics in this game than they did the first one. They are simple cinematics that do not progress your character anywhere, but progress the situation of the world, which is a very important clarification and difference of the two. Because when you realize, okay, a boss is coming in, I'm going to fight him, is a lot different than now I have no control over my character. It presents the situation to you and it readies you for the fight. It doesn't take the fight out of your hands, which is very important. And when we look at the completion of each individual chapters, we can see that there is so much content that is hidden around in the level design and just things that I missed that encourage me to play again and look for these little objects. The story is written well, and it holds itself together on top of that. I never found myself questioning why I was doing what I was doing, and some of the issues in the story may have become tedious or dragged on, but it was always clear about what I was doing and why I was doing them. I never had a problem the reasoning behind the tasks I was doing, maybe just the tasks itself. When the first game finished, it kind of left it on a cliffhanger. The second game is a lot better in its storytelling than the first one, even if it uses a lot more obvious jokes and references to other things. With the improvement of the story and the direction of it that they are taking, I certainly do hope to see a third Van Helsing in the future and continue the story beyond where it has left me at the end of this one. While I may not be completely intrigued and enthralled by the story, for it is simplistically disconnecting you from being the hero as it gives the hero its own identity as someone else, nonetheless, it is an interesting world to explore and one that holds itself together fairly well. I have not found any inconsistencies in how it is written or really how it is drawn out. The only main issue I found with the story itself is the fact on the first map of Bulgaria, where you start against the armies and trying to save the resistance. Once you complete this task, it gives you an option and you have a few quests to complete on the map, but if you fall too far back, which is the main objective as to cover the retreat of the resistance fighters, and if you fall back to the main line, it automatically kicks you out of the zone even if you do not have anything finished and doesn't give you a choice. This may be a bug, as I find it hard for them to allow such a severe oversight, but nonetheless that was my experience on the mission, and that being the only thing that I could find, being such a disconnect from the world, overall the game manages the world just fine, and with the help of Lady Katarina, it progresses in telling a story that is even better or on par with the other well-known games of the genre such as Diablo. Now, when it comes to the combat of the game, the main thing that we're going to be doing, or you're going to be doing, for the majority of the time, that may be a slightly different question. But there's so much to build upon that if you're having an issue with one problem, not only do you have the option to turn down the difficulty, but there's also the option and capability of re-rolling or re-speccing your class. So what do I think about combat? So what I think about the combat is not something that can be easily summed up. Because there's such a large characteristic of customization available, you have so many choices in between so many classes to pick from how you want to build a character. The issue in the combat, or the question I should say, of the combat, is not how to judge it by the character standard, but how to judge it based upon the enemies you face. And if you are accustomed to hack and slash styles of games, the opponents that you face will have different characteristics. Now these characteristics can be random depending on the game, and in this one you will find that the bosses and the minions will all be pretty much the same, but what will be different is the amount of abilities that the enemy has at their disposal. Now a few groups here and there will be different, but the majority of the main fights that you end up with will be relatively the same. But the different types of where the champions lie, what their abilities are, and what special abilities the enemy has do randomize. Now it's this randomization that is tied in directly with the difficulty settings of the game, which means if you have it on a lower setting, the enemies are going to have less special abilities to fight you with. If you have it at a higher setting, every enemy group may be a real pain in the butt to deal with. And what it comes down to when it comes to the enemy capabilities is a whole unique new list of items and animations, as we see some of the same styles of combat and same abilities the enemy wields from the first one. Now and again you'll see some new tricks and tools coming out of a bag, and this increase in spells and characteristics is definitely nice to see, because in the first game, all too often the most powerful combinations were getting easily abused. Spawn up a wall and fire tornadoes or fire tornadoes. This was probably the most deadly combination in the first game. And while this combination is still possible to happen in here, with such a large, more numerous amount of enemy abilities, it's not something you need to worry about every single opponent having. The animational quality, as I said before in the game, has definitely been given a polished over, and it makes everything you do have more weight to it and more feel. When you're fighting and slaying your enemies, it looks and feels powerful and effective. Now if you decide to go melee or ranged, or however you decide to play, there are options and opportunities to defend yourself against damage if you're a mage, ranged, or a melee character. There is passive abilities and skill abilities which will mitigate damage or stop damage altogether. Having these in the game and the animational quality of them are actually very well done, and it strengthens the game and its core of how the game feels, how easy it is to move around the enemy, and how easy and fun it is to kill that enemy. The only real issue is the drawback from the fact that there's not enough randomization in the opponents themselves. When you continue to replay, not every time you go through will it be 100% different outcome. Many of the patterns and groups will stay the same, while a few will change here and there, which is unfortunate. Now, the main issue I have with combat is the limitation in the AI. When you control a mass number of allies, majority of the time, they won't even attack the proper target or attack things that are not directly enemy troops. If you have a structure that's considered an enemy that needs to be destroyed, many of the times they won't even collaborate properly on destroying it. And when we talk about Lady Katarina, she is stuck to you like glue, unfortunately still, as this was an issue in the first game. The companion AI system is actually still pretty weak as it was in the first one, which is unfortunate. Many of the times when you try to get away from opponents, your companions, mainly Lady Katarina, will be so close and tethered to you that she will not leave your side, and if you're using her as a tank, or the only means of line of defense between you and the enemy, every time she falls back, she brings them right upon you because she wants to be right close next to you. This is a severe issue I find in the game, and one that, unfortunately, does play negatively on the combat. Is it something that happens all the time? No, it is 40-60. 40% of the time it happens, 60% of the time it doesn't. But it's still there and it's still an issue. The companion AI is not as well as it could be, and the enemy AI though is decently laid out. Only once was I able to get the enemy AI stuck on a corner, and it was on a bend of stairs and barrels. It's not something that they have an issue with, as usually they can easily just charge to you because their only prerogative is to kill. Overall, this game is actually well worth the price point. For $15, you cannot go wrong with this game, and I would highly recommend it for anybody interested in it. It packs a decent story, fun and replayable combat, and overall a system that can only be bettered by the easy access of getting in and playing with your friends. I appreciate the time you spent watching this, and I thank you for it. For I have been SocioPsycho, and I hope to see you next time.